Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with a brand new guest. We've been talking a lot about different trends and, AI specifically, but we haven't really touched on security, cybersecurity, and what's going on. And this is an interesting topic. I think we're going to get some really insightful information today on how big of a deal this is, why we should care about cybersecurity, and how much money there is into it. I hope I don't inspire anyone to go out and be a criminal today. But having said that, I got on the line with me Rob Embers of Dionach. It's a cyber security company, and they help businesses, they help people really understand the importance of protecting their data and their information. And we're going to be speaking to him today about this topic. Rob, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Kenneth, great. Thanks for having me with you. Excited to talk about this.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting information here. We were chatting in a short pre-interview here. So many things were running through my mind in terms of why we need to be prepared financially, or specifically with cybersecurity. But maybe off the top of your head, what are some of the biggest cases going on right now, and how consequential financially is it to be prepared for someone to hack your information?
Right. I mean, okay, so in the last 6 months, we've had British Airways, we've had Marriott. Just before that, we've had a ton of hacks over the last year or so, and they seem to be getting bigger and bolder, and people might be questioning whether or not they're getting easier. I think in the first thing to say, these reported instances are probably the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of small and medium-sized organizations that are probably far more vulnerable to attack, don't have the necessary defenses in place. Obviously, one of the key things that people are looking to try and extract is data. Data has become more valuable. The more concise the data is, the greater the value is to be sold. Identity theft is arguably on the increase. Money laundering, credit card fraud, these are all things which are growing in problems for organizations and ultimately, consumers. So, I think the problem is huge. I think the estimated cost to the US economy is something like $100 billion to organizations, which is a staggering amount of money when you consider that's got to be paid for by an organization. I think the consequences to the larger corporate businesses, the Marriott hack, I think their stock price dropped by 6.9% the day that hack was announced. So, the consequences are getting more and more.
So, Rob, it's interesting because I think a lot of us feel a little bit at ease when we say, oh, well, Bank of America will ensure a fraudulent transaction, or Citibank, or what have you, with our credit cards. Everything is protected.
Mm-hmm.
But talk to us a little bit more, if you would, about why maybe that is not so much the case. And it's interesting that you brought up data, because it's not necessarily that they're trying to take your information specifically and just spend your money right away, but it might just be collecting information that they can sell. So just maybe expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Credit card information in itself has a value. And you're right. The banks are underwriting those losses. No individual is going to suffer the consequences of a credit card breach through an organization. But I think depending on what kind of information people have, so if I have a 16-digit PAN number from a credit card and a name, can I then put an address to it? Do I have other information that might have a social security number associated with it? Can I build up enough information about somebody to actually go ahead and commit identity fraud? Then go out, set up a number of credit accounts, basically just sort of, Marriott, passport information, credit card information. All of this data is valuable. It's becoming more and more valuable. And I think that when there's a concentration of data, the value increases. So I think that's the bit that the consumer needs to be concerned about. The businesses should be concerned about that too, how they're protecting that. There are certainly a lot of processes in place with bigger organizations to undergo various sort of type of cybersecurity assessments and understand vulnerabilities, making sure that they're then fixing those vulnerabilities is a key aspect and not just I've done a penetration test or I've done a security assessment. I know where my weaknesses are, but really go away to actually then remediate those issues to ultimately protect the data that they have on the individuals, be it their corporate clients or their consumer clients.
So what are some of the things that individuals are seeing that's maybe something that the biggest no-nos, the biggest things to look out for that attackers and hackers are doing that, the average person can do to, protect themselves? Because I think that's where, a lot of the audience here, they want to know, like, hey, what are just some basic things, small changes I can do to make sure that I'm safe out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a couple of key areas that both business users and individuals, and ultimately anybody who has access to any sort of IT equipment, be it their own or their corporate environment. Password management's key. So many times people have very weak and vulnerable passwords, and they'll use those passwords across a number of services. So if I've got a Marriott Rewards account that's being hacked, and it's got either my corporate email address or my personal email address, and I'm using a password for that, am I using that for my Instagram, for my Facebook? All of the other kind of services that, I may use on a daily basis. If it's the same password, hackers they're bright people. They will put two and two together and they will look to understand, if they find information, whether or not they can use it in more than one instance. So I think password management's key. Never use the same password twice. There's a number of free and paid for services that people can download, use either online or offline. Personally, I prefer the offline version because it's on my device. And actually just have a password generated for every service. I say to people, use different passwords, and it's like, I can never remember them. Well, you don't have to. There's applications out there that will help you remember passwords. I think another thing to consider is, again, emails. If there's an embedded link within an email, hover over the link. Look to see whether the link is what you would expect it to be. All right, it might say Microsoft update, but if it comes up with some gobbledygook, in the email when you hover over it, well, then not to click it. I think try not to rely on clicking on links. Even if it's somebody look at the tone of an email. Right? Is that email the way that somebody would typically write to you? Certainly on a personal level that because it's the likes of Facebook and things that people will look for information on and then craft an email that might be a phishing attack asking you to go, hey, do you remember doing this? Click on this link. It was such a fun time. Well, yeah, actually, it might be, but did they send it? Be questionable and really sort of be vigilant about what you're looking at. Where possible, try not to click on any links, open a browser, type in the information and see if it comes up.
So you made an interesting comment in our pre-interview. You said people are always asking you, what is the next thing hackers are going to be trying to hack? And you basically mentioned that there's just such a big pool of fish in what they're doing now. To plug these holes, it's almost impossible. Right. Maybe speak to that, and then also speak to the threat of maybe hackers using artificial intelligence to really hone in on areas to really hack into.
Yeah, I think generally, certainly from what we see at Dionach, the overall level of sophistication isn't that high right now. I think there's a lot of easy targets out there, both on a corporate level and a personal level. So the need for hackers to become even more creative arguably isn't there. Techniques will evolve. The ease in which attacks can be conducted will certainly improve from an attacker's perspective. But I think the next great thing, artificial intelligence is something that is going to be. It is a big thing. It's becoming increasingly big. I worry the tools that are out there right now in the wrong hands could be quite devastating to any organization. It could be because you're involved in an area that is really hard to keep up with. Similarly, there are some tools in the market that employ artificial intelligence to help protect and understand what a network and an environment do, and look for abnormalities in user traffic. But those things really work well in a new environment. If you put them into a dirty, a potentially compromised environment, well then, abnormalities might not necessarily be abnormalities as far as an AI system is concerned. So, I think, we're not using any AI tools right now as part of our hacking. We really are relying on the traditional methods of compromising people, compromising environments, because quite honestly, working with organizations, there are a lot of weaknesses out there. A lot of the basics are not being covered right now. So, introduce AI and the problem just is becoming huge.
Jeez. Yeah, no, it's really crazy. So, what are some examples you've seen? Are hackers using, ransomware, and now with the invention of internet, and it's been around for some time now, but the anonymity that's available for these hackers, and now with cryptocurrency, which allows a lot of an anonymity, that's been a lot of the criticism with cryptocurrency versus mainstream, is that, hey, this is going to allow people who are in the dark web to really do some bad things. So what are your thoughts on that? Have you seen any, ransom type situations?
Yeah, we've had clients, hit by ransomware, and I'm afraid to say in some cases repeatedly. We've had some clients, and obviously I've got to be very careful how much detail I can go into here. There's a lot of client privilege information, but we've seen situations where clients have paid a ransom and then been hit again. The problem doesn't go away. Ransomware is one of the easiest attacks to perpetrate. You can go onto the dark web, and many of your listeners will be familiar with things like software as a service. Well, if you go to the dark web and you go to the right places, you can do ransomware as a service. It's easily done. Minimal effort, minimum skill level required. With a Bitcoin account, with any cryptocurrency account, it's essentially easy pickings. I think for organizations to, I think a lot of that will come via using websites that maybe their staff shouldn't be using during the day, with corporate devices, understanding, again, the phishing element, because they can easily be delivered via phishing. But really, just being aware, and just not clicking on things is a key point.
So, Rob, tell us about Dionach and, what you guys provide for cybersecurity. And it sounds like obviously there's a major need for it, but tell us a little more about it. I'm very interested in understanding what you guys do for companies.
Right. For 20 years, Dionach have been working with organizations, and we essentially assume the role of a hacker, right? We will employ the same kind of tactics and conduct the same type of attacks that would be done via an attacker. Obviously, we do it from a legitimate perspective. We do it with the permission of the organization. But essentially, we'll go in and help a business understand what assets they have, right? Because if they don't know what assets they have and they don't know how vulnerable those assets are to attack, then what are they trying to protect? So I think in the first instance, I get the companies all the time and they say, we need to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, why? What are you trying to do there? So I think really it's kind of taking a step back. It's like, explain your business. What does it do? What do you rely on? And then we go around and build a program of work around those assets. And, we'll do penetration testing, which is essentially simulating an attack, right? We can do that from a blind perspective. We can do it from a minimal informational perspective, or we can do it with a full sort of disclosure of the organization. I think it really depends on what they're trying to get out of it. So, that's a big part of what we do, and probably accounts for 60% of our entire business.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, if you would share some closing thoughts here on just in general, cybersecurity, where we are, maybe where versus where we've been. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Are companies doing a better job of this? Should we feel safer in 2019 than we did in 2010? Just some closing thoughts here as we end this interview.
Yeah, I think in certain things we've seen great improvements. I think manufacturers of things like firewalls and that have become much better. They're much easier to configure. They work a lot better than they used to. So I think there's some real pluses. I think there's some fantastic solutions and products out there which, when implemented in the right place at the right time, trying to protect the right things, provide a great deal of benefit. I mean, I think we're a long way from being complacent about how secure we are. I think, are we any more secure in 2019 than we were in 2010? I think with the ease in which attacks can be conducted, no. Obviously, the number of attacks is increasing. So I think actually we're probably in a worse place, and I don't think it's getting any better. I would be concerned for any organization that hasn't really got this on their radar and isn't really thinking about actually what do we need to do as a business to protect our assets and protect our staff and our livelihoods. It's an ongoing problem, and it's arguably going to get worse.
Yeah, and if I can equate this battle to how the way war has evolved throughout the years. I mean, back in the day, there was just swords and shields, and not one. You didn't have this nuclear bomb which can destroy the whole world at once. There was a resistance, that countries could have against each other to ultimately defend themselves. Yeah. And I feel like we're not there yet, where there's this nuclear bomb yet that the attackers have. And that would be my concern, is that they ultimately get to a point where you really can't fight it. And I hope we don't ever get to that point, but I'm thankful for guys like you that are out there doing what you can to help companies, help people, educate people on protecting their information, and making us aware of the real threats that are out there. So if you want to respond to that, but other than that, thanks for coming on Crush the Street.
Thanks for having me. It was good talking to you. I hope people picked up on some of the key points that are there. Be vigilant. Don't trust stuff. I think we encourage people to live in a healthy state of paranoia when it comes to the internet. And I think if you approach it in that way, you're going to hopefully stay half a step ahead of everything else. But standing still is not the solution.
Good stuff, Rob. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much.